Hey everyone, welcome back to the semifinal. This is the second and final semifinal before the last match of the tournament. Today we're going to have Disciple Deceit versus Aegar, the Freezing Flame. Both these decks have done very well throughout the tournament and they find themselves one game away from the final match. I won't spoil who they're playing in the final. If you want to go watch that video, it is posted on my channel and linked here. Aegar the Freezing Flame is a tempo deck that uses creatures that get bigger when you play instants and sorceries. Disciple of Deceit is a control deck that tutors for answers and then wins the game with combo. Put in the chat who you think is going to win this one and who you think is going to win the whole tournament. If you haven't watched the games yet, go back to the beginning and watch them all the way through. It's been a lot of fun. All right, without anything else, let's get started. Disciple of Deceit starts game one with an island and passes. Aegar has a tap land and passes back. At the end of his turn, Disciple tutors with a Ash Barrens to get a swamp, and then untaps and draws. He plays a swamp, and then pays 2 for a Night's Whisper, losing 2 life and drawing 2 cards. He passes back. Aegar untaps and draws and plays a mountain as land for turn, and then passes. Disciple untaps and draws and plays an island, and without doing anything else, he passes the turn. At the end of his turn, Aegar burns him for 3 with Lightning Strike. Aegar untaps and draws and plays a tapped land and passes back. Disciple plays a Survivor's Encampment, which can tap the commander when he needs it to, and then pays 2 for the commander, Disciple of Deceit. When Disciple of Deceit becomes untapped, you can discard a card and tutor the library for a card that costs the same converted mana cost. On his turn, Aegar plays a Spellgorger Weird for 3, and then passes. Disciple uses the land to tap the commander, and then kills the Spellgorger Weird with an Agony Warp. On his turn, Disciple untaps and triggers and discards a Pestilence, tutoring up a 4-drop. He grabs Thorn of the Black Rose and then plays it for 4, getting Monarch. And he attacks for 1 with the commander. He draws for Monarch to end a turn and passes back. Aegar untaps and draws, and he pays 3 for his commander, Aegar the Freezing Flame. And then he pays 1 to put a Robe of Mirrors on it. On upkeep, Disciple triggers and discards a Crypt Rats to search for a 3-drop. He grabs an Edict and then draws for turn. During main phase, he pays 3 for the Edict, making Aegar sacrifice his commander. He then attacks for 2 and draws for Monarch. Aegar untaps and plays an island as land for turn, and then pays 4 for an Azure Fleet Admiral, trying to get Monarch for himself. In response, Disciple plays Essence Scatter, countering the Fleet Commander and keeping Monarch. On upkeep, he triggers Disciple's ability and discards a 3-drop to tutor up an Amulet and then draws for turn. He plays a Swamp as land for turn, and then pays 2 for a Hymn to Turok. Aegar has 4 cards in hand, so 2 cards are chosen randomly. The first one's a burn spell, and the second one is also a burn spell. Disciple then attacks for 2 and passes, and draws for Monarch. Aegar plays a mountain as land for turn. And then pays 2 to use Fire Prophecy on Disciple of Deceit. Disciple casts Negate, countering it. On upkeep, Disciple triggers and discards a 3-drop to go get a Trinket Mage and draws for turn. He wanted to go pick up the Viridian Longbow, but ironically he drew it for turn. So he plays that and then equips it to the Knight of the Black Rose and then attacks for 1 with Disciple. And he draws for Monarch. On his turn, Aegar thinks about playing his commander, but doesn't want to run it into the Viridian Longbow, so he tries to abrade the Knight of the Black Rose. Instead, Disciple counters with Muddle the Mixture, and then pings him for 1 at end of turn. On upkeep, he triggers the commander, and he discards that Trinket Mage to go pick up something that I'm unable to see. He then draws for turn and attacks for 2. Not wanting to run the commander out into the Viridian Longbow and the Oubliette, Aegar decides to use Impulse to look at the top 4 and put 1 in his hand. He grabs a Skred and tries to kill Disciple Deceit. In response, Disciple plays Forbidden Alchemy, looking at the top 4. He thinks about grabbing the counterspell, but grabs the Mnemonic Wall instead and allows the Skred to kill the commander. Disciple plays an island as land turn and plays the Mnemonic Wall. For some reason, he goes back and grabs the Deprive. He probably should have just used it in the first place to counter the Skred, but he decided not to. I'm not sure why. And then he passes turn and draws for Monarch. On his turn, Aegar untaps and plays an island as land for turn, and then he decides to run out as commander for 5. Disciple decides to counter the commander with Deprive, and Aegar counters the Deprive with Negate. Disciple then shows that he will ping the commander with the Death Touch Viridian Longbow, and Aegar decides to scoop at this point and move on to game 2. In game 2, Aegar will be on the play and starts with a tap land. Disciple draws for turn, and then plays a new sack land of his own, gaining a life and searching up an island and putting it into play tapped. On his turn, Aegar untaps, plays a mountain, and then pays 2 for a Festival Crasher. Disciple untaps and draws and plays a swamp as land for turn, and then pays 2 for a Tidehollow Strix. On his turn, Aegar untaps and draws, plays a mountain as land for turn, and then pays 2 for an Incinerate, killing the Tidehollow Strix. This triggers the Festival Crasher, and he attacks for 3, taking Disciple down to 22. Disciple plays a Vault of Whispers as land for turn, and then plays the Trinket Mage, searching up the Seat of the Synod. On his turn, Aegar plays a land and then attacks with a Festival Crasher for 1. Disciple doesn't want to block it and get his Trinket Mage killed by a burn spell, so he does not. In the second main phase, Aegar plays 2 creatures, On his turn, Disciple untaps and draws and plays nothing and passes back. Aegar attacks with everything. Disciple responds by playing Moment of Craving on the Sky Feeder Strix, gaining 2 and killing it. In second main phase, Aegar plays an Aven Windmage and passes. On his turn, Disciple plays a Mystic Sanctuary tapped, and then passes back. Aegar plays a tap land, attacks with 3 creatures. Disciple plays a Into the Royal Kicked, bouncing the flying creature and drawing a card. Again, he chooses not to block in case there's a burn spell, and he goes to 18. Aegar then plays his commander and passes back. On his turn, Disciple pays 2 for his commander, Disciple Deceit, and then pays 1 more for a Springleaf Drum. He taps the commander with the Springleaf Drum and pays 1 more for a Sign in Blood, losing 2 and drawing 2, going to 16. Plays an island as land for turn and then passes back. Aegar plays an island as his land for turn and attacks with everything. At this point, Disciple decides he needs to start blocking, so he blocks the Festival Crasher with the Trinket Mage. In second main phase, Aegar pays 3 for the Aven Windmage again and passes back. Disciple triggers and has to decide what he can get here that'll win the game. He decides to go for Oubliette just to get rid of the commander and draws for turn. He plays the Oubliette on the commander, and Aegar responds by tapping 2 for Counterspell. Disciple responds with a Muddle the Mixture, countering the counterspell, and the Oubliette resolves. Disciple then passes turn. Aegar attacks with all 3 creatures. And Disciple decides to block. In second main phase, Aegar plays a Elusive Spellfist. When Disciple triggers, he discards a 4-drop to be able to get Pestilence. He does not have a lot of black mana, but maybe if he draws one, he'll be able to clear out the board and stabilize. He plays the Pestilence for 4, and he passes back. On his turn, Aegar untaps and draws and pays 1 for a Chain Lightning. Targeting the Trinket Mage. Targeting Disciple Deceit. Disciple floats a black mana and pays 2 for Capsize, targeting the Festival Crasher. Aegar then attacks with all 3 creatures. Disciple blocks with the Trinket Mage and goes to 5. Since he blocked with the Trinket Mage, he does not have 3 black mana because the Springleaf Drum needs a creature, so he cannot use Pestilence to wipe the board. He decides to go for Chainer's Edict instead, and then plays a Fall from Favor on the Aven Windmage. He gets Monarch, and he draws at end of turn and passes. Aegar attacks with the Lucis Spellfist, taking Disciple to 4. He gets Monarch. Aegar then plays 3 for a Wee Dragonauts. Disciple untaps and draws, and gains a life from a tap land. And then pays 4 for the Commander again, and passes back. In response, Aegar counters the Commander with a False Summoning, and on his turn, he plays a Burn spell, taking Disciple to 2, and attacks with everything. This kills Disciple and moves on to game 3. On game 3, Disciple of Deceit will be on the play. And he starts with a tap land, gaining a life. Aegar plays a Mountain and passes back. On his turn, Disciple of Deceit plays another tap land, and then passes the turn. Aegar plays an island, and then passes. On Disciple's turn, he untaps and draws. And he plays a Swamp, and then he pays 3 for a Liliana's Spectre. It's a 2/1 flyer. When it comes into play, Aegar discards a card. We missed it there in the video. We had an issue with forgetting to record and then having to go back. There was a burn spell that was played that killed Liliana's Spectre end of turn. On his turn, Aegar plays a Sky Theater Strix and passes back. Disciple plays a fetch land and fetches up an island which enters play tapped, and then pays 3 for a Man of War, bouncing the Strix back to Aegar's hand. On his turn, Aegar pays 2 for the Strix again, and then plays a bounce land, bouncing an island back to his hand. Disciple untaps and draws, and plays a Command Tower. He attacks for 2 with the Man of War, taking Aegar to 23. In the second main phase, he plays a Trinket Mage, and he tutors up a Seat of the Synod, and he passes back. Aegar plays that island again, and then pays 3 for his commander, Aegar the Freezing Flame. Disciple plays Counterspell, countering his commander. Aegar attacks for 1 with the Sky Theater Strix. On his turn, Disciple untaps and draws and plays that Vault of Whispers, and then plays a Fleshbag Marauder, which makes both players sacrifice a creature. He sacrifices the Trinket Mage, and Aegar sacrifices the Sky Theater Strix. Disciple then pays 2 for his commander and passes back. He feels pretty good about his position at this point. On his turn, Aegar plays a Spellgorger Weird and passes back. Disciple attacks for 3 with the Fleshbag Marauder, and Aegar goes to 20. Disciple then pays 2 for a Tidehollow Strix and passes back. Disciple could have attacked with his commander there to get it tapped, and maybe he should have, but he was concerned about a burn spell. Aegar did have a burn spell and decides to use it on Disciple of Deceit, putting a counter on the Spellgorger Weird. On his turn, he pays a blue for a Robe of Mirrors, giving the Spellgorger Weird Shroud. In response, Disciple plays Cast Down, trying to kill the Spellgorger Weird. Aegar has a negate and counters the Cast Down. He doesn't attack and passes back. Disciple untaps and draws, and plays a bounce land as land for turn. And then he plays a Crypt Rats. The idea at this point is to use the Crypt Rats to do enough damage to the Spellgorger Weird to get it off the table. The Spellgorger Weird is already a 5/5. Aegar untaps and draws, and plays a burn spell, killing the Death Touch Flyer, gets a counter, and attacks for 6 on the ground. At this point in time, a mistake was almost definitely made. Disciple thinks about triple blocking for a minute, and then decides that any burn spell will just make him lose the game. He decides to take the 6 and try to find another way to deal with the Spellgorger Weird. He untaps and draws and plays a Swamp and land for turn, and then plays an Executioner's Capsule. He doesn't have 6 black, so he decides he's going to try to race the Spellgorger Weird, and he attacks with everything. In response, Aegar uses a Lightning Strike on the Fleshbag Marauder and takes 3. Then Disciple plays his commander for 2, or for 4, and passes back. On his turn, Aegar plays a Thermo Alchemist, and then plays a Fire Ambush for 3 to do 3 damage to Disciple Deceit. Before combat, Disciple uses the capsule on the Thermo Alchemist, and then Aegar attacks with the Spellgorger Weird for 8, taking Disciple to 11. Disciple untaps and draws, and realizes he's in a pretty big pickle and tries to come up with a way to get out of this. He decides that the commander is essential to finding something and pays 6 for it again, and passes back. Aegar plays an island, and then pays 3 for an Aven Wind Mage, keeping himself protected from edicts. We missed it on camera, because we had another issue, but Aegar played something to kill the Man of War, and then attacked with his Spellgorger Weird for 8. Disciple blocked with the Crypt Rats, and then tapped his commander with his land, the Survivor's Encampment. On his turn, he discards a Deprive to go get a Moment of Craving to deal with the second creature. And then plays a Soul Manipulation. He was going to go get a Fleshbag Marauder, and maybe he should have, but he decided a Death Touch creature would hold off the Spellgorger Weird for another turn, so he could tutor up something else. On his turn, Aegar untaps the Spellgorger Weird, and then pays 4 for 2 creatures. And does not attack. Disciple discards a 1-drop and goes to get a card that'll let him get a creature from the graveyard. He plays that Edict to try to get rid of one of the creatures, and then plays a Omen of the Dead to get the Fleshbag Marauder out of his graveyard. He plays the Fleshbag Marauder, making Aegar sacrifice the other creature. He sacrifices his commander here, which is almost definitely a mistake. Maybe he was hoping to get a flicker to bounce that Fleshbag Marauder again. But he probably should have sacrificed the Fleshbag Marauder. On his turn, Aegar plays Behold the Multiverse, and then pays 2 for an Incinerate, killing the Death Touch creature. He attacks with the Spellgorger Weird, and Disciple blocks with the Fleshbag Marauder, and then goes to his turn. On his turn, he pays 3 for a Chittering Rats, Aegar puts a card from his hand on top of his library, and then Disciple passes. Aegar untaps and draws, and he attacks, and Disciple blocks with the Chittering Rats. On his turn, Disciple untaps and draws. He thought about using the Scry off the Omen of the Dead, but decided against it. Also, Aegar played his commander on his turn. Disciple plays a Mnemonic Wall to get an instant or sorcery back from his graveyard. The Chainer's Edict would be very good here, but since Aegar played his commander, it won't do what he needs to do, so he decides to get Counterspell instead. He blocks the Spellgorger Weird and takes 3 from the commander, and on his turn he plays a Muldrifter to draw 2. Aegar plays a False Summoning from the Muldrifter, and Disciple plays a Counterspell for the False Summoning. The Spellgorger Weird is huge at this point, and he untaps with it. He does find that burn spell finally and kills the Muldrifter and attacks for 14 with his commander and the Spellgorger Weird, winning the game. Well, I'm a little biased, but I was really hoping that the Disciple Deceit would win that game. Honestly, I think there were mistakes made. I think the end of the game was pretty sloppy. I think maybe if Disciple had gone and tutored different things or made a couple different choices, he might have come out in a better position. Also, Aegar had a creature lined up every turn for the edicts, and Disciple just couldn't get enough edicts to clear out the board. A good game, and thank you to my son, who is 7 and is learning to play Magic and did a great job helping me film that. He's been getting better so quickly, so look forward to seeing more of him in these videos. Aegar is going to be moving on to the final. I won't tell you who they're playing if you want to go watch that other video, but it's going to be a great match. Thank you for watching this all the way to the end. If you liked the video, please hit like, and if you want to support the channel, please subscribe. That is very helpful to us. Have a great one, and I'll see you next time.